Greetings, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in to our How to Thru-Hike the Superior Hiking Trail webinar with author Annie Nelson, who's here with me today. My name is Jaron Kramer. I'm the Development and Communications Director for the Superior Hiking Trail Association. We are the nonprofit that protects, renews, and enhances our beloved Superior Hiking Trail. We're so excited to host this webinar today. We know that there are so many thru hikers and long distance hikers, and it takes a lot of time to plan and get things in order to have a successful trip. And so today we're going to learn some practical advice for doing just that, planning and enjoying a long trip on the SHT. Thank you everybody for tuning in, and a special thanks to everybody who pitched in a donation at registration. It's your support that helps us focus on our work to care for the trail and continue to provide helpful information resources like this. And before we jump in, I just want to let you know a couple things, what to expect for today's webinar, and then share a couple updates from the SHTA. So first off, this is our first ever Zoom webinar. So we're really excited to give it a try, but should there be any technical difficulties, please bear with us. We don't expect any. We really want this to go smoothly, but please let us know in the chat window if something dropped, if you can't hear us. We want to make sure that everybody gets something out of this. You know, we're really excited to be able to connect with you virtually, though we wish that we were out there on the trail with you today. And that's the reality amid COVID. And so we're going to keep trying to do things like this virtually to help trail users, new and existing, long time, be able to find ways to enjoy the trail. So after Annie's presentation here, we'll answer a few questions from those of you who are tuning in live, and then a few from folks who sent in questions in advance. We're going to try and bring folks into the video stream as well to answer your questions, and I'll explain how to do that once we get there. You're welcome at any time to ask your questions in the chat tool at the bottom of your screen. I'm guessing many of you are used to Zoom webinars or Zoom events by now, but if you have any questions, use the chat window. As for the SHTA, as you can imagine, 2020 has been quite a year for the trail and for our association. We've put a lot of time and energy into adapting our work to these new realities of COVID-19. There's been unprecedented use of the trail this year. Our trailheads have been busy, especially on weekends and especially near state parks, which that's the case normally, but we've seen a huge increase this year as well. Even so, many long distance hikers have completed their trips without issue. And I think what's so critical is that planning ahead to make sure that you have a backup plan with regard to COVID, that you're checking the trail conditions page, that you're checking the Superior Hiking Trails COVID page to make sure that you're being safe and ready to have an enjoyable trip. Obviously, the health of our trail community, it's a top priority for us. And as stewards of the trail, we've really had to shift how we go about our business on the trail itself. And while our trail maintenance was delayed quite a bit this spring due to the pandemic, by and large, the trail's in pretty excellent shape, thanks to the work of our volunteers and our crews out on the trail, getting it ready. You know, it's fall now, it's the perfect time to be out on the SHT, and it's ready for you to get out there to enjoy. Obviously, we've had to do that with new safety protocols in place, and it stopped us from being able to do some of our large scale events. So we've had to shift our focus to do smaller scale trainings, workshops out on the trail, and be really careful and cautious. We've also had to contract out a few of the larger projects to make sure that our volunteers are safe and rely on some of our contractors to get some of the big stuff done for us. So it's been a process for us to navigate those challenges. And of course, at any point, if you have questions about COVID safety or about trail conditions, again, I'd point you back to our website, superiorhiking.org. Important too, we've done our best to provide new and really useful trail information resources. And I know, Annie, you're going to mention this in a little bit here, but this year we released a new data book for the SHT, which is a compact trail guide. We just released a new trail atlas on Avenza maps and in print. I've got my copy here. It's a new map series that are quite detailed to make sure you know where you are and where you're going on the trail. And then we've been providing frequent updates on our website and social media channels to keep you in the loop. We really want to keep doing this kind of work here so that we make it easy to recreate responsibly on the Superior Hiking Trail. So whether that's more resources, more virtual events, different kinds of offerings, we really want to keep everybody connected throughout these challenging times. And we hope that you're safe and that you'll be able to get out on the trail and enjoy yourself. Without further ado, this brings me to today's event. I'd like to introduce Annie Nelson, author of the Thru-Hike the Superior Hiking Trail. I've also got right here. It's a great resource to share some practical advice on planning and enjoying long distance hikes on the trail. I'll let Annie introduce her background, but I just want to let everyone know you're in for a real treat today. Annie's book is an excellent planning resource. I first downloaded it on Avenza and read it cover to cover in a single sitting because I was so it's a great way to present this information. We were thrilled that she went ahead and put it all together. And now it's available in print as well. And of course, Annie, you're a great friend of the trail and an advocate for everything that we do. So I'm excited to welcome you here and share some of your wisdom. I will go ahead and turn it over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Jaron, and everyone for being here. This is amazing, watching the participants number tick up here. So welcome, everybody. Thank you for coming. I'm thrilled to talk about my favorite thing in life, through hiking the Superior Hiking Trail. So let's go ahead and just get started. So I'm going to, Jaron, it's not allowing me to share my screen.
That should get you in.
There we go. Thank you so much. All right, and I'm gonna do it this way because I found that on Zoom with using a slideshow, sometimes it can be a little delayed. Let's see, I'll get this over here. Okay. All right, so can you guys see that okay? How's that looking, Jaron? Good, okay. All right, so our goal for today, you guys, is to make sure that on your through hike, when you reach this beautiful spot at Bear Lake, that you don't have any, you can fully enjoy it, that you will have arrived there in full health, full happiness, and just grooving on life, living on the trail. So just to introduce myself, I am a two-time Superior Hiking Trail through hiker, author of the guide, as Jaron said. Last year, I also completed a 5-month backpacking trip on the North Country Trail of about 1,500 miles. And I have about 10 years of Northwoods wilderness adventuring experience. And most of you, I'm sure, are very familiar with the Superior Hiking Trail, but just for anyone who may be new to the trail, it is a 300-mile, 18-inch footpath that runs from the border of Wisconsin all the way to the Canadian border. Along its route, the Superior Hiking Trail provides 94 free campsites. I personally think it's currently the best long-distance hiking option in Minnesota. It is also, as of last year, officially part of the longest national scenic trail in America, the North Country Trail. So the North Country Trail is in the same family of trails as the Appalachian Trail and the Pacific Crest Trail. So when you are through hiking the Superior Hiking Trail, you will also be on America's longest trail. So every time I get on the Superior Hiking Trail, the thought that keeps running through my head is that it is a complete work of art. It's gonna take your breath away with all of the climbing that it makes you do, but also with its incredible views of both Lake Superior and just all of the forest around the area. I especially love the inland views in the Superior National Forest when the trail reaches that part. Also just wanted to do a quick definition for anyone who's kind of new to the concept of through hiking. Through hiking is hiking every single mile of a trail. So you hike the entire thing through is where that phrase comes from. I personally think the Superior Hiking Trail offers a phenomenal first through hiking experience because of how it manages to combine both intense beauty and a real backcountry feel, meaning you're going to get away from the noise of the roads, you're going to get into the peace and quiet of the forest, you're really going to feel like you're out there, just you and Mother Nature, while at the same time running in very close proximity to a ton of amazing trail towns, which is going to make resupplying easier, accessing gear if you need to easier, access to medical treatment if you need to easier, things like that. All right, so now what we're going to do is we're just going to take a little tour up the trail. This is one of the things I really wished after my first through hike that I had kind of known before I headed out there, is what to kind of expect from each section of trail. I feel like I would have been able to plan my pace a little better if I had known this information. So I'm going to show you some pictures now, but I just want you to know that I'm not even showing you, I'm showing you maybe 5% of the awesome things to see out there. So don't worry, there's no real spoilers in here. It's just to give you a taste of what you can expect from your through hike. So I'm going to start at the southern end of the trail and work north. So the trail really starts actually a little bit south of Duluth, but it runs through the city of Duluth. So a lot of folks avoid this section of the trail because logistically it is one of the most challenging due to the fact that there are not any free SHTA campsites for 54 miles. Basically, there's one at the Wisconsin border, and then there's not another one until you get north of Martin Road when you're out of Duluth. But do not skip this section if you can do it. It is phenomenal. It is a completely magical experience. The SHTA has managed to build basically like what I call it's like a secret garden or secret forest corridor through the city of Duluth. So even though you're hiking in the city, you feel like you're in the North Woods. And this stretch is going to offer you obviously the southern terminus, which has this great border sign there. So you got to go get your southern terminus selfie down there. The city has these amazing river gorges, just like the rest of the North Shore does. I believe this is Knowlton Creek. There's just tons of them. There is actually a southern lake walk as well. The northern lake walk is pretty famous up toward north of Grand Marais, but there's another portion of the trail that runs right along Lake Superior. And you're also running by a ton of awesome restaurants. So my tip for people who are doing the Duluth section is when you're gonna get down onto this stretch where you literally walk right through downtown Duluth, go light on the food for that day. Make a plan to stop somewhere and eat as much as you can because it's going to be your last time for a while. Great microbreweries, great just a lot of stuff to see. So it's worth taking some time and going kind of slow through the city once you get there. Once in a while you will pop out into a street intersection like this, but your times at places like this, even within the city, are pretty rare. You're going to be out and back into the forest fast. And the benefit of coming out to junctions like this one at West 10th and 27th Avenue West, if you head like 8 blocks down the ridge, you've got the Duluth Grill right there. You've also got the city bus line running. So if you're needing to go somewhere else in town, it's nice to have that option when you're going through town if you need to go get supplies or you just want a nice, good meal. So there are benefits to doing the city portion. Once you get up out of Duluth, you're going to enter into the stretch of trail that's probably the easiest to do what some folks call roll miles, do real big miles. This is one of the flattest sections of trail. It's going to feature a lot of young forest because there has been significant logging in this area, but it doesn't mean that it's at all ugly or anything like that. I love this stretch of the trail. And it's very different than the other stretches. So, you know, you have these young forests. It's going to have a lot of beaver activity in the area, lots of beaver ponds. And for me, it's always a really good time to pay attention to the kind of microflora. You know, the North Woods is an extremely diverse biome. It's a very unique biome in Minnesota because of its proximity to Lake Superior. It kind of creates conditions that wouldn't exist that far north normally. And I just fall more and more in love with everything that's on the forest floor. There's amazing lichens and mosses and all these small plants, things you can forage and eat, things like that. So tons of mushrooms, lots to see at your feet, which is good because you're looking down a lot when you're hiking. All right, and then once you get closer to two harbors, you start getting kind of into the foothills of what they call the North Shore Highlands, which are the Sawtooth Mountains are also part of this formation. It's the same formation Superior Basin. It's 1.1 billion years old of hills that make for some hard climbing. So on the left here, this photo there, this is an outlook that's in the Encampment Forest Association stretch of the trail. And then on the right here is Silver Creek, which is one of my favorite creeks along the trail. Once you you keep heading north, you're going to start now running through the trail, passes through every single state park on the North Shore. This is a photo of the Gooseberry River, which beavers are valiantly attempting to dam up. I don't know if they'll ever be successful, but you know, then next you get to Split Rock. This Split Rock loop is fantastic. It's one of the most popular hikes on the SHT. When you're through hiking, you don't have to hike this loop to be considered a through hiker. But you definitely should because it's just so beautiful. There's so many waterfalls and river cascades up the river as it turns northwest off of the shore, and you just head up the river and then you cross the river and you come back down. And there is probably the deepest river ford at the top of that loop. So it's a little extra challenge too. And it was very scary for me, my first through hike, to do that because I was hiking solo, but it ended up being super fun. And I forded it a number of times now, and it's really never been an issue. So, yeah, you know, and you can also see, like, once you start heading, Duluth the two harbors aren't too muddy, but once you get past two harbors, you definitely start getting into the real, like, wetlands of the trail, and you're gonna have some sloppy trail once in a while. You get used to it, I promise. And then on the right here, I think this is Beaver River as we're getting up toward Silver Bay. And once you get into Silver Bay, you really are starting to get into the peaks along the trail. This year there's a summit challenge. So if you hike 7 of the 12 peaks listed on the Superior Hiking Trails page, you get a button. But also it's just a lot of fun hiking. I think if you complete that by October 31st. Yeah, so Silver Bay to Schroeder. Buddy, no, go lay down. I'm sorry, you guys. My dog really wants to be in here. Yeah, so once you get to Silver Bay, you are really going to start hitting the parts of the trail where you're climbing a lot. Over the length of the Superior Hiking Trail, there's about 41,000 feet of elevation change. And elevation change is a very scientific way of saying you are just going to be climbing up and down a lot. These are ancient old mountains, which means they've been eroded down a lot. So it's not like a steady climb up and then a steady climb down. It's just a lot of like this. I have met hikers on the trail who are from out west who have done a ton of mountain climbing, who really found the Superior Hiking Trail very difficult physically compared to the hiking they were used to. So I think us Midwestern hikers, we don't think of ourselves as being as tough as some of those East Coast or West Coast outdoors people, but I think this trail is it rivals some of that stuff. So yeah, and just to give you an idea, as I was hiking on the North Country Trail last year, there's less elevation change to the east. So I think over a period of 3 months, I lost about 20 pounds over 1,100 miles. And then when I hit the Superior Hiking Trail, I lost 10 pounds in 300 miles. It really works, yeah. So be prepared for that. But while you're working hard climbing up on top of all these anorthosite domes and Carlton Peak and stuff like that, you just get these phenomenal views, and there's just something amazing to see around every corner. On the left in this screen is section 13. That picture is pretty dim because I was through hiking during the solar eclipse that year. So while I was on section 13, the eclipse was happening. Unfortunately, it was too overcast to see it. On the right here, you have the longest boardwalk on the trail at Sawmill Creek. That's right after section 13. That's currently being repaired. I'm not sure, Jaron, do you want to hop in and give anybody an update on where that's?
Sure, yeah. So it has begun to fail, and we have a contractor who is getting ready to remove and entirely replace the structure so that there's no trouble getting across. And right now there's actually an optional reroute, which you can find at our trail conditions page on our website in case you get there and you don't want to keep going or you just want to skip it. We hope to have it fixed and replaced here by the end of the month or sometime into October. By the end of the trail season, it should be ready to go. Thanks.
Yeah, so folks have been reporting that they are, it's difficult enough to cross to where people are falling off. And when I went across it last year, it was actually fine. I think it's probably worse this year, but I would just say go slowly. And honestly, if you're falling off of it, you're just falling into kind of mucky stuff. It's not like probably going to hurt you that bad. So yeah, but as Jaron said, there's a reroute option if you want. I love this boardwalk because the beaver pond here is so cool too. It's massive and there's always great wildflowers along it. All right, and then after the boardwalk, you get into this kind of nice series of lakes. You got Eggy Lake and Sanju. This is the view from Lily's Island on Sanju. You get into CrosbyManitou State Park, one of the original backpacking options in Minnesota. There are sites in there you can reserve. There's no cell service in the park, so you want to do your reservation before you get there. But I believe this is the view from Horseshoe Ridge. It's awesome. Then you really start, as you're really getting toward the Sawtooths, these amazing river gorges start opening up. This is the Caribou River. You get the Temperance River Gorge. The trail here doesn't follow the entire loop down the river, and that is a worthwhile side trip to take if you're looking to do one of the kind of trails that shoots off the Superior Hiking Trail. This is at Temperance River State Park. That entire river loop is amazing. And actually where the SHT crosses the Temperance, you haven't even gotten down to this part yet. So if you really want to go see the really cool potholes and the amazing formations in the gorge, you got to go down the trail a ways. And just a heads up, it's always super crowded with people coming up because there's a wayside at the bottom. So there's a lot of tourists at it too, but it's still worth it. And then you hit the Sawtooth Mountains. The picture on the right here is going to give you an idea of some of the bouldering you're going to have to do at times. I mean, that's really what it feels like. I think technically there are probably some class 2 scrambles at times on the Superior Hiking Trail, where you are definitely using your hands to get yourself up and over things. Although I'm very short, some of you tall people may be fine, but it's very rocky at times, easy to turn an ankle. I'm definitely a proponent of using trekking poles on a through hike of the Superior Hiking Trail. They have saved my life many times. And then Carlton Peak, the official beginning of the Sawtooth Mountains. Sometimes, unfortunately, you're socked in by fog thanks to Lake Superior, and you don't get any kind of view up there, but most of the time it is spectacular. And just a really fun place to take a break for lunch. I always take lunch up there if it works out for my schedule for the day. On the right, getting toward Lutsen, this is the amazing Poplar River Gorge. I think this is my favorite gorge view of the whole trail. Once you get into the Sawtooth, there's a bunch of, there's a lot of climbing, but there's also some great loop trails you can do. I can't remember if this is the view from Oberg Mountain or Lutsen or Laveau, but just do them all. They're only about a mile long, and none of them are more than a couple of miles long, and they're so great. Just tons of fun to go and do them. Just a view also of a common thing that's going to happen for you on your through hike is you're going to wake up in the morning to this kind of gorgeous, eerie fog, just filling the woods. Lake Superior is a hydrologic phenomenon and basically generates its own weather. So you get to know its moods very well, very fast. And then as you get through the Sawtooth and you're approaching Grand Marais, you still got this good peak left. This is Pincushion Mountain on the left. On the right is from the Northern Lake Walk that I mentioned before, and people kind of either love the lake walk or they hate the lake walk. You know, one thing we all think is kind of funny, or some of us think is funny, is that the trail is named after Lake Superior, but you're actually very rarely down on the lake itself, and that was by design. The vision of the original folks who started building the trail and routing the trail was to have it running the ridges of these highlands in order to get all those amazing views that we all love. But it means you don't actually spend that much time down on the lake. So I love the lake walk for that reason, because you just get some really good quality time with Lake Superior. Hiking through the cobble, the big fat rocks that we have on our side of Lake Superior here, can be a little bit difficult. So it might be good to plan a little extra time for that stretch. I think it's only about 1.5 miles long. I also always just plan to take lunch here if it works, because why wouldn't you? It's beautiful. Look, take a break, take a nap, look for agates. I'm not sure if this is still true this year, but last year the water levels were so high that the lake walk was kind of blocked, and I don't know if people have figured out a bushwhack around that or if people have just been walking through the lake, but you basically get to a point in the beach where there's no beach, it's just water and then this very dense kind of swamp brush to the right. And the last time I tried to get through that, it was full of thorn bushes, and I was like, nope, not gonna do it. Thankfully, there's a lot of roads that cut down to the beach, so if you just backtrack a little bit, usually you can, if you want to, you can just head out to 61 and head out and do a short road walk, and there's going to be another road that cuts down to the beach after that flooded area. Or you can just walk through the water if you want to. It's going to be refreshing. Okay, so north of Grand Marais may be one of my favorite stretches of the trail. I love Duluth just because it's so surprising when you hike it. You think city when you think Duluth, and that's not the experience you have when you're hiking the Duluth section. But north of Grand Marais, you're really starting to now get into the more remote stretches of the trail, and it's just gorgeous territory. It's super dense with rivers, and not as much climbing for a little bit. This is a photo of a meadow, which is really rare on the trail to have these wide open sweeping meadows. So I'm not sure what conditions created this one, but I love it. This is another spot I always take a long break in. You can see 5 Mile Rock off in the lake. There's usually boats going by. There's frequently raptors hunting in the meadow. You can watch while they do their work. So it's a great place to take a break. Once you get farther north, kind of in the final, I'd say 20-25 miles of the trail, you're really entering back into Beaver Territory. You're going to get a lot of close-up views of just how dynamically beavers can impact a forest. I think it's at the Caribou campsite up in this stretch. Go explore that campsite a little bit if you camp there, because you can actually find old blazes off in the woods where you can tell like the trail used to go there, but it can't anymore because the beavers kept flooding it, and moving it, so you had to move the trail. And this is Carlton Pond, which is massive. It's just enormous, and it's a beaver pond. You get some great overlooks up north too. There's actually, for some reason, the amount of climbing you do on this northern stretch of the trail always kind of surprises me, but it is significant. The day that I hiked Hellacious, this is the Hellacious Overlook. It earns its name. I was having a hard day that day. It was tough. And the story of how they built this section of stretch of the trail is kind of hilarious. So if you guys are interested in learning more about kind of the trail and its history and the people who've built it so that we can hike it, I'll have a story coming out in the October issue of Northern Wilds magazine that kind of does a basic primer on the trail. And then there's also a book called The Superior Hiking Trail Story. And this is a new history book that runs through kind of how each section got built. And if you stay out there long enough, you might run into Shug. I don't know if anybody recognizes this guy, but he is a kind of beloved local hiker who's done a lot of YouTube videos about the amazing hiking we have here in Minnesota. And I got to meet him on my last thru-hike, and it was definitely a highlight of the trip. So maybe if you stay out there long enough, you might run into him as well. Okay, so we just reviewed all of the amazing things, those moments where you are going to be profoundly grateful that you have given this gift to yourself of rearranging your life for weeks or even a month to go out on the trail. You're going to get up on top of that Bear Lake overlook and just feel like the luckiest person alive. But some days it's just going to suck. I'll be honest with you. Some days there are some major challenges. So what challenges does the SHT pose for you? As I kind of talked about before, tons of climbing, just tons of climbing. And it can be very hard on your feet, knees, hips. It can be just physically, there are some days where it just kicks your butt. Fording the Split Rock River. This can be definitely a challenge that could even potentially stop your hike. You definitely want to look into how to safely ford a river before you do so. The general advice I've heard is to kind of unclip your pack when you're going through, so that if you do fall into the water, you can get your pack off so it doesn't drag you down. You just want to go real slow, real careful. The Northwoods rivers are pretty full of tannins because of all the pine trees up there, so it's frequently hard to see the bottom. And you generally don't want to ford a river if it's moving faster. The current is moving faster than you can walk, and it's deeper than your knees. So, but I've done that. It kind of depends on the river and the conditions, and you just want to go slowly when you're going in. If there's a huge rainstorm the night before you're going to get to this crossing, you may end up having to just delay for a day. You could just pitch your tent at one of the sites on the side of the river that you're on. There's 2 campsites on either side of the loop, all great sites. you could just, and if you wait, a lot of times if you even just wait overnight, the water levels will drop enough to where you can cross safely. Or the other option is just always to hike back down the loop, and there's a reroute that you can do around this if you don't want to do the ford. So, and information about that is on the Trail Association's website. Rain. All right. There will be rain. Okay. There might be rain every day. As I said before, Lake Superior generates a huge amount of precipitation. I can't even count the number of times I have been hiking on this trail, laughing hysterically as I look down at the forecast on my phone that says it's supposed to be bright, sunny, 85 degrees, and it's currently pouring on me in 62 degrees, you know, just like for the exact spot I'm in. The lake really can generate weather fast. Most of the time rain is very, very manageable. This is kind of one of the magical parts of through hiking, is figuring out that a lot of the things that we are afraid of before we go out there, you know, the rain, the bugs, having wet feet, the animals, the dark, all of that. When you're out there and you're forced to deal with it, suddenly you realize you love it. I love hiking in the rain. In fact, I actively pray for rain in two conditions. One, when the bugs are really bad, because when it rains really hard in bug season, the bugs can't survive it, so they hide. So you get a break from them. And the second time is when it's really, really humid. You know, in the Northwoods, it's pretty rare for us to have what we would consider really hot temperatures, but really high humidity can also cause heat exhaustion. So when it's like 90% humidity out, I am actively like doing a rain dance on the trail, like rain on me, please rain on me, rain on me, rain on me, because it just, you know, cools you down. So, but when it rains, for me personally, a lot of people don't struggle with this, but I kind of, I run cold. I'm a cold sleeper, as they say in trail lingo. So when it drops below 60, and it's just raining all day long, I do kind of struggle with that sometimes. It can be very uncomfortable. Most of the time in camp, if it's raining, it's not going to be a huge issue. You have, this is why I like to use a double walled tent, they call it, instead of a single wall tent, because I can at least, double wall tent has the outside fly, and then the inside piece of the tent. And if it's a really, really bad rainstorm, I can actually break down my tent from inside the fly, leave the fly up, but break down the body and get that rolled up and tucked into a waterproof bag. So at least the inside of my tent is going to stay dry. The rain fly is not going to stay dry. There's no way to avoid that. So I just tuck that in an outside pocket. And I believe we did have a question from somebody about that. Just one second. Yeah, so we had a question from Martha. So when you've had a rainy night, do you pack up wet or wait in camp until your tent has dried out? This really depends, Martha, on kind of what's happening when I wake up. If it's still pouring outside and I just don't have time in my schedule to wait out the rain. So let's say I'm on my last day of food and I have 18 miles I got to do before I get to town in order to get food. Doesn't matter if it's pouring, doesn't matter if my tent is drenched, I got to go. And in that scenario, I'm going into town that day. So you especially don't have to wait. You're not going to sleep in a tent that night probably. But other times, the other thing to know is the North Shore is usually so humid that even if it stopped raining in the morning, the wetness isn't really going to burn off for a couple hours. So usually what I do is, I pack it up wet, and then I'll, from one of my breaks, either a morning break or a lunch break, I will just plan to take a longer break and stretch out all my gear to dry out. And so I try to keep my eyes peeled on the maps for maybe a vista point that's going to have nice rock bald. One, to prevent like ticks and bugs from crawling all over my stuff, but also because the warm rock underneath will help dry everything out faster. So also in the fall up north, the strength of the sunshine really, really, really weakens. So it can actually be really difficult to even get your gear dry at all. And I think in those kind of conditions, you just have to be very careful about trying to make sure your sleeping bag, your sleeping clothes, and kind of your insulated, that those stay dry. Because as long as your sleeping bag is dry, you're going to be fine at night at least. And when you're hiking, even when it's raining and it's cold, as long as you're moving, you're still pretty comfortable. All right. Oh, I'm sorry. We had another rain question, although I'll just put this up for something else to look at. Okay, so we also had a question from Rebecca K. When do the rains normally begin? Anytime it's above 32 degrees. Anytime. I've been on the trail in February when it was raining, you know, in the winter. So it doesn't really stop. It's more a function of temperature. Yeah. All right. Yeah, so the SHT is famous for mud, roots, rocks, tons of roots, these cedar roots. Again, recommend trekking poles to manage that. And just, there are going to be times when you're hiking when you just have to look down. You can't do anything about it. You just got to keep your eyes on the ground. Every time I I trip. So this is another shot of kind of mud and what that looks like hiking through it. It's really not an issue unless you've got a really muddy stretch on an incline, kind of and so like a friend of mine, he thru hiked in 2019, and he was going down into Devil Track River Gorge up north of Grand Marais, and he said it was a fairly treacherous descent because it was really muddy. It had really poured that day, but he made it down okay. Bugs. Yes, the bugs. We all love to talk about the bugs. The Superior Hiking Trail Facebook page has its own official bug report. So let's do first a question. We had a question from Rebecca K. When are the ticks done in the fall? Okay, I personally think one of the coolest parts about the North Shore is that for some reason the ticks don't really seem to love the boreal forest. So the farther north you get, they just don't seem to be as much of an issue. And I have found from my Northwoods hiking that they are the worst for sure in May and June. But again, the ticks can be out as soon as they're kind of temperature activated as well. So you'll see ticks out on the snow before the snow is even melted. But I usually, by the time you get into July, I just am not finding them on me very much at that point. It's really, though, important to check yourself for ticks in the morning and at night every day, no matter the time of the year, because they just carry really serious diseases, not just Lyme disease. And I have had Lyme disease. I didn't get it on the SHT. I got it on a trail down in Arkansas. And I got it because I didn't practice my tick safety, which is tucking my pants into my socks. I didn't do that for one day, and I got bitten by a tick with Lyme. And it was nasty. You know, I fully recovered and I'm totally fine, but it took months for me to feel normal again. And it has a lot of weird symptoms: sensitivity to light, headaches, just weird muscle pain and stuff like that. You don't think right with it. You don't want to get it if you can avoid it. But otherwise, you know, the bugs out there that you're gonna cope with are mosquitoes, obviously, black flies. You got the stingers, the bees, the wasps, stuff like that, spiders. The ones that are, you know, actively trying to eat you are the mosquitoes and the black flies. I love hiking during bug season, but they are gonna drive you insane sometimes. Like it's just, you will be functionally insane at moments because they are just so thick. The system I've developed to deal with them is I really like to use the bug netting on my head, but also they've got bug netting shirts and pants. So whenever I can use those, I will. The pants don't last very long hiking because you're running through brush so much and they'll get torn up. But my bug shirt is still going strong after 2,000 miles. So that's what I like to do. I don't like pesticides when I'm through hiking because I'm not showering or bathing for such long periods of time. I don't want to be continuously putting poisons on my skin. So that's what works for me. A lot of people like permethrin. The only reason why I don't like permethrin is because it's toxic to invertebrates. So things like slugs and frogs and salamanders and lizards and snakes and stuff like that. And it's also toxic to fish. So, all right. And then, okay, so now we're gonna switch into kind of the planning phase. And that front part took longer than I thought, you guys. I'm sorry, this is running long. I'll try to go faster now. But so the first thing, as you're setting out to do a through hike, I would recommend is adjusting your expectations. When we're out doing a section hike, like a weekend hike or a week-long hike, I think it's totally understandable to want good weather, pretty weather, to just go out there and have fun. If I've only got 2 weeks of paid time off a week, and I'm using 4 days of that to go backpacking, I want the trip to be good, right? I don't want it to be slogging through mud and rain and 40-degree weather. I get it. But through hiking is not a vacation. It is awesome, but it's not going to feel the same. And so if you kind of go out there with this expectation that you're going to have perfect weather the whole time, or no bugs, or it's just going to be beautiful the whole time, you may end up being disappointed. So it's more about the journey and setting that expectation. Frequent, very popular question: what's the best time to through hike? This depends all on you, really and truly. It just depends on you. I never know how to answer this question, because the other thing is that the weather is totally different year to year. So this is a picture. You've got the trail, that meadow that I love, what it looked like in mid-September in 2016, which is a super warm year. It was basically still summer, well into October that year. 70-degree temperatures in October. In mid-September 2019, it basically was already deep into fall, and by October it was snowing up north. So, you know, but I can say generally, the April, it's going to be mud. It's right after snow melt. I think it's a good time to stay off the trail personally, because you can really damage the tread because of how muddy it is. So April is going to be mud and ticks. I just skip it. May, you're going to have ticks, a little bit of mud. There's going to be fewer people out there. You can still have freezing temperatures in May up north, so you want to be prepared for that. You really got to have 3-season gear for sure. June, the ticks are easing up a little bit toward the end maybe. Bugs are definitely starting to come out. Just a gorgeous time to be in the woods though. Just all this fresh green. I love hiking in June. It's one of my favorite times to be out there. July, you're going to be facing a lot of heat and humidity. Great time, great swimming weather, tons of berries, blueberries, raspberries, thimbleberries, all of that. Definitely chances of more severe weather though in July. The atmosphere is very dynamic. You're going to have your big storms then. In August, that's another favorite time of mine to be out there. The bugs really start to mellow out, usually by like mid-August, depending on temperatures again. But and you're still kind of getting some nice summer feeling weather, but you're also getting those cool fall nights starting already. September, usually the bugs are gone, not always. You can get, again, a full range. It can be 70s to 30 degrees already. October, for sure, you're going to be down probably in the 30s and 40s a lot of the times, overnights for sure. November can be winter. If you're going in November, there's a really good chance you're going to get a big snow dump on you. And the other challenge with September, October, November is that all of the hunting seasons have started along the trail. So as Jaren mentioned earlier, one of the sections of the trail is actually closed this year. So if you're doing a through hike, you're going to have to just skip that stretch of the trail, which makes for additional challenges. And as far as December to April, are you nuts? No, I'm just kidding. I hate it anytime somebody asks me that when I'm talking about my hiking plans. I would never call you nuts. People have done it. People have done winter through hikes. I can't talk about it because I have not done it, but it's been done. All right. Okay, so the most important thing when you're starting out to actually plan your hike is to get as many information resources as you can. So I've kind of arranged these and what I feel like are their importance. So first of all, definitely you got to get the guide to the Superior Hiking Trail. It's available both in print and also digitally. So if you get the Kindle app for your phone, you can do it that way. The trail maps, second most important thing. The trail atlas, again, they're available as printed maps, or they're available on Avenza as digital maps. Those digital maps are GPS enabled. And what does that mean? It means if you get yourself off trail somehow, you're gonna be able to pull up that map. You will be able to find yourself on that map in relation to the trail. And it even has a nice feature where if you hit this little arrow, it'll show you which direction you're facing. So if you get lost, not only do you know where you are in relation to the trail, but you know which way you're facing to how to get back to the trail. So I'm a big fan of the Avenza maps. The North Country Trail uses those as well. I use them for my entire 1,500-mile hike. They're very good. So then I do think my through hiking guide for the Superior Hiking Trail is your next most important planning resource. The guide to the Superior Hiking Trail is going to give you the information you need to know about the trail. The maps are going to give you what you need to know about navigating. And my through hiking guide is going to give you what you need to know to make this happen, how you get food, where are the towns, how far, between the towns, what speed should I go, how long is it going to take me, what gear do I bring, safety concerns, stuff like that. So it's really the specific information that through hikers need to be successful. The next one is the data book. People love this for if they want to leave the main guide at home. It kind of gives you all the information you need about the trail, but very condensed version. So it kind of cuts everything out just to the nuts and bolts of what you need to know about the trail. That is not available as a digital book yet. It's only in print, but it's very light. It's like 3 ounces. It's very small. So what I always recommend is that you basically go digital for everything except for that data book. And a backup copy of your maps. So I think you should have, if you're going to use the GPS maps, great, but you should always have a printed version of the map as well in case your phone fails. But as long as you have that data book and backup maps, even if you don't have the guide with you physically and your tech fails, you're still going to be able to navigate yourself off the trail to get that fixed. So the other place you really want to check into is the Superior Hiking website. They've got a ton of pages there with information about kind of what they expect of people who are using the trail, the practices they would like you to follow, what the current trail conditions are. You want to check trail conditions in your planning stage. You also want to check them right before you leave for the stretch of trail that you're going to do. And then every other time you have service or you're in town, it's definitely worth checking them to see if there have been any updates. The Superior Hiking Trail updates these every week, so they're really good about that. And what I do is I usually just take a screen grab with my phone of the web page because I don't have service out there, so that when I'm getting to a stretch of trail, if I'm like, oh shoot, there was something on this one that I need to remember, there was that closure, where was that? Then I can pull up the photo and take a look at it, even if I don't have service. Okay, so the next most common question is, how long is it going to take me? Like, how do I figure this out? And it's a math problem. So the trail is 300 miles long-ish. And so to figure out how long it's going to take you, you basically just have to take your hiking speed, and then how long you want to hike each day, add in any rest days, and then that's how you figure it out. So if I think I have estimates in my through hiking guide about how many miles you do each day and what that translates into the amount of time you should give yourself to do a hike. If you're doing 10 miles a day, you're definitely going to need a month or more, maybe a few more days. If you're going to do 15 miles a day, I think you can do it. What was that? That was like 24 days, things like that. But if you're a roll miler and you want to go out and do 25-mile days every day, you're gonna be able to knock it out in 2 weeks. So all depends on what you want to do. So if you want, and then as far as planning, I also think that I kind of like to do 2 things. One, I like to do an incredible amount of research. I read everything I can get my hands on. I look at all of the maps. I check the trail conditions. I make notes on anything I need to be aware of. But then I kind of just sketch a plan. So if you want to really specifically detail each and every day, okay, I'm going to do 8 miles this day to section 13, and then I'm going to do 10 miles the next day and do it like that, you absolutely can. And that's how I did my first through hike. And this that you're seeing now is my actual spreadsheet for my first through hike. But I do just want to draw your attention to the fact that at the top of the sheet, it says daily mileage plan 9. So absolutely, you know, do your research, make a plan, get the maps, get the guides, sketch a plan, and then accept almost nothing is going to go according to your plan. And that's where having resources like the guide with you, my through hiking guide with you, is going to just lower your stress level out there and increase your chances of success, because you're going to be able to adapt your plan whenever you need to. This is a photo of how I kind of plan my mileage now when I do long distance hikes. I don't use a spreadsheet. I just kind of have a mileage goal for the week of where I'm trying to go. And then literally the rest day before I head out onto that section, I kind of do a little mini research and kind of sketch a plan. So this was my plan for September 1st through the 17th last year, looks like. And I was supposed to get all the way from Split Rock to Palisade Creek. That did not happen. So from day one, this plan was scuppered, but it was okay. It all worked out. Two things that are really nice for planning, or for just when you're out on trail, is both my guide and the Superior Hiking Trail book have these campsite mileage indexes. This is a definite improvement from the main guide. When you're through hiking, the main guide is written for the full spectrum of hiker, so day hiker to through hiker. And because of that, it's got all this extra mileage in each section for the spur trails for getting on and off the trail. So when you're through hiking, you're like, you have to do all this math. Like, wait, no, it's not actually 7 miles for me because I'm on the trail, so it's only 5.9. And then how far is it? It gets very hard to do with hiker brain, as I call it, which is where when you put in a 16-mile day and then you try to do math, at least for me, I'm not very good at that. So I make mistakes. And then that makes me cry later when I realize I still have 4 miles to go. So this is a great tool if you're just trying to figure out, like, okay, I am at Jackson Creek campsite and I'm feeling pretty good. I'm not ready to end for the day. So how much farther is it to the next campsite? Do I want to do 4.1 more miles today? Just a nice, quick, easy reference for when you're out on trail or planning. So either one is good for that. Camping. Yeah. So this was another question we had from someone. All 94 Superior Hiking Trail campsites are free. The state park campsites are not, and are frequently 100% booked. Just so you know, your chances of walking into a state park and getting a campsite is almost zero. It does happen. They will also accommodate you if you're having an emergency, like a medical emergency or a gear emergency, or you just cannot keep moving, but you will have to pay full price for your campsite there. So we had a question from Joe. What's it like to share campsites? Because these campsites are free, but it is all come, all served. It's not first come, first served. It's all come, all served. So we just pack in. You can be real cramped. I've been camped at section 13 with 40 other people before. And it's awesome. You know, you meet a bunch of other backpackers, you geek out about the trail, you share, you know, information about what you just hiked through. It's awesome. It's especially awesome if you get somebody in camp who's like baking everybody cupcakes, like it happened to me once, or somebody who just likes to build fires, because I'm too lazy to do that. So I'm always thrilled when somebody's in camp doing a fire. Okay, I think I already talked about why we don't skip Duluth, so I'm going to keep going. Food. I recommend that you take about 5 to 6 days out, or don't carry more than 5 to 6 days if you can handle it, because you should usually have 1 to 2 pounds of food per day for yourself, or about, so it can get heavy. and you want to base how frequently you resupply on how far you're going each day. So if you are hiking 20 miles a day, you can probably resupply about every 100 miles. If you're hiking 10 miles a day, you're going to have to resupply every 50 miles, if that makes sense. And then there are pros and cons to doing resupply with a box that you ship to yourself versus just going into town and grabbing what you need. I kind of run through the pros and cons of those two systems in my guide for you, but just some examples would be, it's quicker. So you don't have to go grocery shopping while you're in town. You can just run to the post office, grab your box, and then maybe you go to the grocery store and you get like some goodies for town or some cheese for trail, fresh tortillas, stuff like that. So it's much faster. The downside for me personally of doing a box is that, especially my first through hike, I had zero understanding of what kind of food I needed. I did not have enough things with salt in them. That caused an actual health issue for me. You also have no idea how hungry you're gonna get. Hiker hunger is real, and it's ferocious. And I never had enough food in my box for how many calories I needed out there. So when I have the option, which you definitely do on the Superior Hiking Trail, I much prefer to just go to town and buy what I want. If I'm having an extra hungry week, I bring more food. And then I can also just get what I'm craving, I don't know what I'm going to be craving 4 months before I leave. So this is where I'm going to really heavily pitch my guide now, because this is what the guide does for you. It helps you figure out this question. I think we had several questions from people attending about, where are the best places to resupply? I can't answer this question for you. There are 15 different spots along the trail that would allow you to resupply. So this is all answered again by that math formula I just had up there. How fast are you going? How long are you out there? And what my guide does is shows you all of the options and also what's there, because not every town is kind of equal in the amenities that they offer you. Some of them only have a post office and a gas station. Others have a grocery store that's better than the one down the street from my house. So it's really a wide range. Boxes are good for things like if you have really specific medications you need, or you have a specific diet you have to follow. If you're interested in kind of avoiding spending too much time in town due to COVID, stuff like that. But yeah, you want to have at least 1 to 2 pounds a day of food. You want somewhere between 2,000 and 4,000 calories. We thru-hikers, we burn a lot of calories. So this is a photo of some stuff I eat out on trail. I'm a big fan of tortillas and just like anything I could stick in a tortilla. So this is Spam, relish, some barbecue sauce, tortilla. You're going to be able to find food out on trail, especially during berry season. Fuel, you can't ship fuel, so you're going to have to figure out some way to get fuel when you're in town. Again, my through hiking guide details all the types of fuel in town, where you find them, things like that. So that's probably the most valuable feature of that book, is it basically is a giant yellow pages for the trail, and it has specific walking directions from the trail to every single place. So you don't need to have internet service to find any information to get yourself from the trail to where you need to go. Navigating, very easy on the Superior Hiking Trail, because they do such a great job of taking care of it. It is well blazed, it is well marked, it is easy to follow. I rarely hear stories of anyone getting lost on it. The only time I get lost is when I'm not paying attention, when the trail is running through the state parks, because there's so many trails crossing. There's so many trail junctions that if I'm not paying attention, sometimes I'll wander down one of those for a couple miles before I figure it out. So usually it's pretty safe. Never hurts though to go out and practice your map and compass skills. If you're here in the Twin Cities, there's an orienteering club, the Minnesota Orienteering Club. They produce 20 different orienteering routes in the state parks around the area, so you can go out and practice finding a bearing, things like that. One of the longest sections in the book for me is safety. And the reason why it's the longest one is because usually people are kind of afraid of the wrong things, in my opinion, before they do a through hike. So people are very, very, very afraid of wolves and bears. But if you look at the data of what's actually going to kill you out there, bears and wolves don't even make the list. Okay, it's falling, drowning conditions. So I have a huge section on kind of the safety risks on the Superior Hiking Trail itself. I've got interviews with search and rescue folks, their data of what it's actually getting them out into the woods to help people, rescue people, things like that. So I think it's really important to properly kind of assess the risks of a through hike. You know, people, if you start telling people you're going to start taking a through hike, you'll notice it. You're going to start getting very strong reactions from some people who are going to tell you that that is just not safe to do. I think the general public's opinion about through hiking is that it's much more dangerous than it actually is. But it is dangerous. And I think the thing that makes it the most dangerous is that you are taking yourself way out into the woods, away from rapid medical response. Now, our search and rescue squads on the North Shore are phenomenal. St. Louis County has one of the best ones in the state. And they frequently assist with anything that happens on the North Shore. So, and it's a huge squad. It's just amazing. They've got a Facebook channel or Facebook page if you guys want to follow them. They're so cool. But it's just the reality. You know, if I fall off a cliff and I gore myself on downfall, the chances that I'm going to survive that are very slim, because of the amount of time it's going to take for people to get to me and get me out of there. So if you're really concerned, one of the other questions we had was cell service. If you're really concerned about being able to have a way to call for help, really the only way that you can almost have a guarantee on that is to get something like what's in the picture here, the inReach alarm, which is a satellite communicator, which will work even when you don't have cell signal. But even these aren't infallible. They do fail, especially if they don't have a clear, you don't have a clear way to get the signal up into the sky. So if you're in heavy tree cover, or if there's really thick cloud cover, sometimes they don't work like you hope they would. So the safety section of the book is really to help people, one, get familiar with the risks, but also to help you assess whether or not you're willing to take them, because there are dangers out there. Just not really, the bears aren't really going to cause you many issues as long as you do the right things. And now we are at the Leave No Trace 7 principles. So these are really, here's how I think of these. This is how you be a trail angel to everybody else out on the trail. So I think there was one night I hiked into a site at Sanju, pitched my tent, I was exhausted. I mean, there was no way I'd push myself way too far, way too hard that day. This is gonna happen to you on your through hike, okay? You're gonna have a day when you are so far past your physical limit that it is kind of like torture out there. And I hit camp like that, got into my tent, looked to the side and realized somebody had dumped 2 pounds of chili mac on a tree right by my tent instead of packing it out. And I had a choice in that moment, as dark as falling, as I am exhausted beyond belief, of packing up all of my stuff and hiking down the trail. I think it's not that far. There's another site like a mile down the trail, but sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's like 10 miles, 6 miles to the next site down the trail. And I had a choice to make then. Do I stay and risk that a bear is going to come into camp after this food? You know, that's a real safety thing. So, so basically pack it in, pack it out. And the Superior Hiking Trail has the best resources for this on their site, of how to follow these. My guide, I also offer some just really easy ways to leave no trace. Sometimes I think it's just like, you know, like when you see all that toilet paper along the trail, just bring a little trash baggie just for your toilet paper. That's it. So don't throw toilet paper on the trail. It's very easy to not trace that. Latrines. Every campsite has a latrine. This is such a luxury after having hiked 1,100 miles on a trail with no latrines and digging cat holes every time. This is how they get them out there. That's Harlan. They literally just, so every time you see a latrine, just thank a volunteer because they worked really hard to get that there for you. Another part of Leave No Trace with the Superior Hiking Trail, I think we had a question from someone about how do you camp when there aren't any campsites? You don't. You don't. Not on this trail. You have to be in an established site. In my guide for that Duluth section with the 54 miles without a campsite, there are many options available though in the city of Duluth to camp. There are campgrounds you pay for, there are motels, there's a hostel in Duluth, there's tons of options. So you can get through Duluth camping, no problem. It is not even hard, okay? Thankfully, this trail sign is not on the Superior Hiking Trail. It is on the North Country Trail in Michigan, but it just cracks me up. There's going to be a lot of private land, though. So many private land. Jaren, do you want to hop in here and tell people about that?
Sure. Thank you, Annie. I think the Superior Hiking Trail is kind of unique in that we exist mostly on public lands where, it's shared space. And we cross many private property parcels. I think there's over 80 different pieces of private property that we cross. And especially between Duluth and Two Harbors, there's a long stretch of trail that's almost exclusively private property. But there are sections of private property even within the Superior National Forest. And so while there are certain rules in a national forest of different kinds of camping, you never know where the trail might actually be right along the border of private property. That's why we ask everyone to stay only at their designated campsites. And, in those rare situations like in fall during the hunting season, there are some sections that close, and it's really important to be mindful of that so that we can continue to have access to these private lands. It's really by the grace of those landowners that our trail exists and we have access to it. So it's really simple if you can plan ahead and make sure that you're following those rules, that's the easiest way to make sure the trail will still be there.
Yes, and when we don't do that, there are consequences, and there have been consequences recently. So this is the Gooseberry Gap. People really hate this gap. I personally don't mind it. Runs along the Gitchigami bike trail right now, off of which there's an amazing secret beach on Lake Superior. I'm not going to tell you exactly where it is. You should go find it. So there's always a positive to anything. But so what happened with the Gooseberry Gap is that people were stealth camping or camping out on a private landowner's land in places that were not campsites. They were having fires, that were not allowed. There's a lot of private land between Two Harbors and Castle Danger. Tons of signs basically saying, "Don't camp here, don't have a fire here, please." And because people did not follow that, we lost that stretch of trail. And I think that happened back in 2016. And maybe even earlier, I don't know. And we still haven't found a reroute. So, well, they have the route. They just got permission, but it's 4 years later. So this can, if we lose a huge section of trail, it's not just like, snapping your fingers and you reroute it somewhere else. It's a hugely complicated thing to build trails. So we have to be very protective of the trail we do have, especially because it's so awesome. So that's why it's really important to only camp in established sites or private campgrounds or stay in a hotel, okay? All right, so gear. Everybody wants to talk about gear. I am not going to have the best response here for you guys. I'm not going to tell you what to get. I'm sorry. I'm not going to tell you what to get because gear is individual. It really is. Your body is different than my body. My feet are happiest in trail runners and very, very thin wool socks. Other people's feet needs a super rugged, super thick highly supportive, waterproof, thick wool sock, right? That would not work for me. If I wore that on a trail, I would be crippled within 10 miles. Okay. My feet need to breathe. They don't mind being wet. They don't mind being a little cold. They really don't. That's not the same for everybody. So, so my through hiking guide does offer some really good resources to start learning about your gear options. There are some surveys they do with long distance hikers that I think are really good to look at each year about what they are using. So it's got information about that, but I do have some of my gear here. We're going way longer than I intended, you guys. I'm sorry. So I wanted to give some time for you to ask questions. I'm going to keep moving, but I do have gear, some of my gear here if we want to talk about that, if we have time at the end. Yeah, so through hiking in the time of coronavirus, this is going to present some extra challenges this year. So I just checked up on the North Shore, and these are the kind of numbers of the infections they're having. So definitely the Duluth area is seeing the largest amount of infections up there. You know, I can tell you as somebody who's lived in the state, I have not hiked this year on the trail at all because the communities along the trail were very concerned about the fact that they just do not have the same level of medical care as we do in my community. So you can see though Cook County has a very low rate of infection, Lake County has a very low rate of infection, and the stay-at-home order has been lifted. We are free to travel again, and the North Shore community, for the most part, is definitely inviting people up to do so. All of the businesses up there definitely want people coming. So, so more and more people are, and it appears to be relatively safe to do so. I think that, oh, that's right. I had this whole, here, this is what happened with this. There it is. Okay. So here's what I think you need to do to be aware of if you're going to be doing a through hike while the COVID-19 is still going on. You got to have a mask. There's a mask mandate in the state of Minnesota. If you're from out of state, you have to have a mask in order to enter businesses here. All of the shuttle drivers on the SHT, to my knowledge, are requiring you to wear a mask if you want to shuttle. Lutz and Resort is not accepting any kind of mail drops, so that's a piece of information in my guide that's not accurate currently. Spirit Mountain Campground in the Duluth stretch, which is one of my favorite places to stay when I'm doing the Duluth stretch, they're closed for the year. You're probably going to have less access to indoor spaces than you normally would. And you think when you're through hiking that you don't really care about that, whatever, I'm going out to be in the woods. But sometimes you are having some gnarly weather, or you really need to charge your cell phone or something like that. And the ability to just like pop into a state park office building and do that and check your internet or your email and stuff like that is just crucial, you know, to kind of save you from a dangerous situation. That just may not be available in the same way this year. And there's also going to be like reduced hours of operation. A lot of businesses are, you know, having to close and open, or close earlier, open later for cleaning. Some lodging is still permanently closed, like the Nanabuju lodge up near Hoveland they're still closed. They're trying to figure out how to reopen. But so basically, you should double check with every single business you plan to access. And that's where having that list of resupply resources is going to make that really easy for you this year, because you can sketch your plan, say, okay, I want to go to Finland to do my resupply. The number for the co-op is right in the book. You just call them and be like, what are your current hours? Is there anything I should be aware of? You know, but you definitely want to be double checking with things. And as Jaren said at the top, I think you got to have a COVID plan. I mean, just like any through hike, you kind of have to have a plan for what happens if I break my leg, what happens if I get giardia, what happens if, you know, any number of things. I think COVID now, for the moment, has to be in the list of things we kind of have to have a plan for. So if you come down with symptoms while you're on trail, you know, how are you going to handle that, and how are you going to get yourself safely off trail for yourself and others? Okay, so this is my favorite quote from Akuna, who's a triple crowner, and it's just kind of, you know, why? So why go to all this trouble? You know, I've deluged with information today. I hope it wasn't too much. why go to all this trouble and effort? Why arrange to take 2 weeks to a month off of your regular life? What makes it worth it? And he says that, you know, when you're on the trail, you can feel everything moving around you. And that's, I can just say for myself that my long distance hiking has gifted me with a connection to the natural world that is extremely powerful, and I count as one of my most valuable things now. So if you want more information, you can find my guide at the website. You can find it at the Superior Hiking Trail Association too. I'd encourage you to purchase it from them because all the proceeds for them go back to the trail. All right, so let's go ahead and open it up to Q&A. And I think I missed some questions, Jaren, so I'm going to stop sharing now. And
that's okay. Thank you so much, Annie. That was awesome. And as Mally and Dave just chimed in, this has been amazing. So thank you so much for sharing your wisdom. There have been a handful of questions that came through. I wonder, do we want to take a couple questions live and see if we can try to do that and welcome a couple folks in?
Yes, please.
Okay, let's go ahead and try here. So what I'm going to ask is, if you have a question that you'd like to ask Annie, go ahead and raise your hand. We're going to see if this works, and I'll try to welcome you in to our presentation here. So if you've got a question that you'd like to ask Annie, raise your hand and I'll try to bring you in. All right, looks like Eric's got a question. I'll go ahead and bring you in, Eric, and you're going to come in muted. So if you'd like to unmute yourself, you can go ahead and ask your question. Hey.
Hi, Annie. Yeah,
Hi, Eric.
About heading out on the trail, I see a dog in the background at your place. I'm wondering, do you take dog on trail, and what kind of experiences have you had with that?
Many people do, and successfully. I took my dog on my first long distance hike on the Border Route Trail and the Superior Hiking Trail, and he quit. So he was not up to it. We had conditioned very well beforehand. I was super prepared. I had, you know, wax for his feet. I had extra calorie dog food for him, tons of extra treats, a bed for him, insulation for him if it got too cold, things like that. And ultimately he just didn't like it. So he had to go home. So that's one thing I would say, if you're going to bring your dog with you, have a plan B if in case your dog needs to bail out, because you're essentially bringing another person on your hike. Then they could have their own medical issues. They could have their, you know, they just might need to bail out. So if you don't want that to end your hike, but otherwise, yeah, a lot of people have a great time bringing their dogs with. I think somebody asked about Giardia and things like that. It's a definite possibility. There's also been cases of, what is that called? The fungus in the soil that can kill dogs. That is on the North Shore. Another risk I didn't think about before I brought my dog out, that one of the search and rescue guys, a captain of the Two Harbors Rescue Squad with 40 years of experience, told me that sometimes dogs can actually draw predators to you. So the wolves may ignore you, but another canine being in their territory will trigger their territorial response sometimes. But I have not heard of a single dog ever being attacked on the trail. It has happened in the city of Duluth, however, so it is possible. Just something to consider.
Good. Thanks for the info.
Mm-hmm. Blastomycosis. Lung issues. Okay, thank you, May, for filling that in. So if you guys want to do more research about that, that's what that's called. Again, haven't heard any, I don't think I've heard any confirmed cases of dogs coming down with it on the SHT though, so.
All right, we just welcomed Grace in here, and it looks like you've unmuted, Grace. So if you'd like to ask your question, go ahead.
Yeah, so my question is about bringing other people with you on the trail, and if you think it's better to solo hike, or if you could go with a partner.
I think both of them offer pros and cons. I think having someone with you to turn to and say, oh my God, isn't this awesome, is so fun, right? It's really nice to have someone there for that. Also for the scary situations, like if you're injured and you have someone with you who can go get help, that is crucial. That just happened on the trail. A mom and daughter were out, and the daughter had to go out, hike out to get her medical help. So it increases safety in certain ways. Personally, I really prefer solo hiking because for me, what I'm about is getting out into the woods and really connecting with nature. And I find that is very hard to do when there's another person. And it's not because they're doing anything wrong. It's just that we are social beings. And so when you're around each other, you tend to chatter away. And because of that, you tend to miss some of the really beautiful, quiet moments. Yeah, so I think either way. But I will say also, having solo hiked 1,500 miles, there were definitely times where I knew that I was not hiking as well as I could if I had had someone there with me, kind of like, yeah, we can do this. Let's go. Come on, you know.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Grace. Let's have another question here. Dennis, why don't we bring you in to ask your question? And if anybody else wants to ask a question, go ahead and raise your hand. Dennis, once you're in, go ahead and unmute yourself and ask away.
Hi, greetings from Rhode Island. I wish I was in Duluth. My wife and I have been there a few times. You didn't talk about northbound or southbound, so I was just curious if you've done the north or the southbound.
Yes, very good questions. So I have only through hiked northbound because I was always kind of going on to do some more hiking after that, because there's some really phenomenal hiking up north, aside from the Superior Hiking Trail, like the Border Route Trail, the Kekakavik Trail, Isle Royale, phenomenal. But I will say generally, what people seem to be concerned about with that is that the northern terminus is much more remote. So even if you have, like, Verizon seems to be like the best cell phone carrier to have signal, but if you're trying to arrange a shuttle to pick you up from the northern terminus, it can be tricky. People get worried about that. But then at the same time, people really want to hike north because it seems more fun to be hiking into a more wilderness area than back into the city of Duluth, right? So, but if you go south into Duluth, you can also literally walk yourself up to a steak and a beer. So that's a great way to end your through hike, right? I think the concerns people have with finishing at the northern terminus are more than they need to be. You can wait until you get to Grand Marais to arrange for a shuttle, and at that point you have 250 miles behind you. You know your speed, you know how your body's doing. You're going to know when you're going to get to the northern terminus. The other option is you can get to Grand Marais, and then you can actually shuttle up to the northern terminus and hike back to Grand Marais if you want to do it that way. So there's some options to do. I think either way offers a great hike. Yeah.
All right. See you in 2021.
Woohoo! Awesome.
Thanks, Dennis. All right, we got one more question here from Dave Colby. Dave, go ahead and unmute yourself once you're in and ask away. And also, hello, nice to see you.
Hey, thank you so much. Oh, and sorry, I'm not on video. Question for you. I have not been backpacking this summer because of COVID and what I'm hearing about just lots of use. And curious about kind of future plans for campsite capacity, and also that sense of having to be kind of having to police other backpackers at some of the more popular places.
Jaron,
Impact on planning.
Questions for you. Yeah.
You know, Dave, this is kind of tricky for us because our campsites are built with a shared model on public lands. So I don't have a great answer for you. This is part of the reason why we're doing things like this, to try to share some of these best practices and remind people to be really careful and be responsible when they're out there. I think that there's a tendency, when you see something that's less than leave no trace, you might want to like call it out and berate. And I always think, don't berate, educate, and look at those moments as a teaching moment. But there is the reality that COVID is serious and we really need to prevent the spread of the virus. And, you know, our campsites, they're not huge. And with more traffic, they're probably, it's hard to say. There are times when they're at or even beyond capacity. And so I think that is, it's a risk it's a reality of using the trail right now. And I think there's ways that you can mitigate that risk. You can try to look for campsites that might be less frequently used. Wear a mask, keep your distance, maybe establish your space once you get into a campsite so that, you know, say hello to people and kind of define where you're going to be hanging out. It's really a shame that we don't have that same community experience around a campfire that we crave and that's so joyous about the SHT experience. But, you know, it's trying to strike the balance of enjoying the trail, getting outside that's relatively safe, and using some of those shared resources. So, you know, we've got a couple tips about how to enjoy the trail safely amid COVID on our website. It's at a banner at the top of the page. It's pretty easy to find. But as far as capacity on campsites, you know, it's kind of up to you. And again, having a backup plan. Maybe there's another campsite a couple miles down the way that you might be able to reach and know that there's going to be fewer people there. I think that's really where we're at. And as far as the association is concerned, we're looking for opportunities to add campsites. That Gooseberry Gap, I don't want to get too far ahead of myself here, but we're really hoping we can add a couple campsites there, a couple around Lutsen. You know, we're watching for opportunities where we can do that. It's on our priority list.
Great, thanks. And thanks for this event. And thanks, Andy.
Absolutely, Dave. And I can just say as like a thru hiker, if I were going out to do a thru hike right now, what my personal plan would be to avoid any of the campsites that I know are super popular. So that would include Lake Agnes, Beaver River, Bear Lake, yeah. And maybe angle toward some of the larger multi-group sites where I know there's a lot of space, like Trout Creek, Caribou, Wayside, yeah, when I can, so.
All right, looks like we've got one more question here.
And thank you guys for staying so long. I'm sorry the initial presentation was so long. I told Jared, I'm like, I'm going for 15 minutes. Clearly, I missed the mark on that by a lot. I don't know how long Jared wants to hang out today, but I'm yours for as long as you guys want to hang out. Yeah, so we'll try to answer as many questions as we can.
All right, Tiffany, we just welcomed you into the chat. If you want to unmute yourself, you can go ahead and ask your question with Annie or I. Tiffany, if you're there and you want to ask your question, you can go ahead and unmute yourself and ask away. Oh, there you are. Tiffany, if you're talking, we unfortunately can't hear you.
Trying. Okay. Well, Tiffany, what I'm going to do while you're trying is I'm just going to answer one of the questions that came in on the Q&A. Okay, so from Marianne, if we haven't hiked for 8 years and we're not sure of our physical endurance, is there a better place to start our hike than any other, north or south? We're thinking of starting near Castle Danger and going north and not necessarily going all the way to the northern terminus. Yeah, I would actually recommend, okay, Castle Danger is actually probably where the hardest part of the trail starts. So Castle Danger all the way up to Lutsen basically is the most physically intense part of the trail. So if you were looking to start on a gentler portion, I would start actually closer down toward Two Harbors. The stretch between Duluth and Two Harbors is really wonderful and easy. So you could, and that's a recommendation I make to anyone planning their hike, to start off with lower mileage days. So give your body a little bit of a running jump. Maybe 8, even if you're going to be doing 15, 20 mile days, trying to do that toward the end of your hike, start with 8 to 10. And starting on that stretch by Two Harbors would also be more mild. Okay, Tiffany, you got it?
We lost Tiffany. Well, Tiffany, you can always send in your question to our info@superiorhiking.org email address, and we'll try and get back to you. Annie, do you want to answer any other questions here that came in? I'm just gonna cruise to see if any that jump out. There was a couple questions about shuttles.
Sure.
I'll let you go there, and then I've got maybe some intel to share too.
Okay. Yeah, the shuttles are great. There's actually a lot of people offering rides along the Superior Hiking Trail all of a sudden. So you've got kind of the classic Superior shuttle. Bob, I'm not sure, and maybe this is the intel you have, Jaron. I have heard some reports that he's a little bit difficult to get a hold of this year, so I'm not sure what's happening there, if they're running a smaller crew than normal. But then there's also the wonderful Harriet Quarles, who we all love, and she's like totally she's like the, I don't know, patron saint of the trail. So Harriet's phenomenal. She kind of operates in the gray area, so she would be the one that you would call to shuttle you up to the northern terminus. In the Silver Bay area, there's a gentleman named Jeff Amundsen. He's got Cadillac Cab. He's come all the way down to Split Rock to swoop me up before. He's great. He'll do it. He'll go as far as you want. It's going to cost you money, but he'll go as far as you want. So, and then in Duluth, there's a new guy. I'm not very familiar with him yet, or kind of what, you know, his level of trustworthiness, but his name's Matthew, and he's posted a few times in the Facebook group as well, which is really nice because Duluth has been a struggle. You know, the Superior Shuttle doesn't go that far south, so people, and neither do the taxis or Uber in Duluth, will not go to the southern terminus. So, and what was the intel that you have, Jaron? Do tell.
Pretty much that I think they're really busy this year. It has been, you know, it's been a lot of folks coming up to the shore and using the shuttle services. And I've heard from quite a few people that they've, you know, tried to make a reservation or get in touch, and it just took a little while longer. So try to be patient with them, give them a chance. But, you know, they're both still in operation. All right, or say all the shuttles are still moving.
And I know we're talking through hiking today, but one thing, like, so I'm going up to the trail next week finally for the first time this year, and I'm going to do it out and back. I'm not going to shuttle. I'm not even going to worry about it. I'm not even going to go to a loop. I'm just going to go and hike in and hike right back out. Because the one thing I've learned after 2,000 miles of hiking is, one, the trail looks very different from the other direction. It's like a totally different trail. You're missing half the trail when you only go one direction, okay? And also, you know, yeah, and that's why to me, hiking during the pandemic, especially if you have a lot of concerns about potential infection by shuttling or being indoors and stuff like that, it might be a good time to, you know, do an out and back. And you can totally do an out and back through hike. You just do 600 miles, you know, get the full.
All right, Tiffany, I think you're back in here and you're unmuted. Let's see.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, super struggle bus earlier. So I just got done doing the last like 64 miles a couple weeks ago, and we did come across we stayed at Jackson Creek, and it's a smaller campsite, and we ended up with like 14 people there.
Whoa.
And it kind of worked out. It was just kind of implied that, you know, we take our own time at the bench, and then the next kind of group comes in and you move on to your camp, you know, your hammock or tent or whatever. And so everyone just kind of was understanding that, you know, you took your own time and your own turn. And it kind of was like that Devil's Track too. We ended up with 14 people there as well. But my question is you talked a little bit about different food stuff, and we brought a lot of like freeze-dried meals along the way, which, you know, they're fine, and there's a lot of calories in them, but they're still kind of heavy, and you get a little sick of them after a while. Do you have a good like resource that you use for that kind of thing? I mean, tortillas are great, but at the same time, you know, I get real sick of a tortilla and it gets kind of dry, and that's the last thing I want sometimes.
Yeah.
So do you have like a resource?
There are some good resources, and I do detail these in my through hiking guide as well. One of my favorite websites is that Backpacking Chef. And he has a bunch of recipes so you can do it yourself, which is really nice because then you can just kind of get the variety. It's lighter, it can be cheaper. My favorite thing I've learned from him is that if you buy cooked shrimp, they dehydrate so easily and so well. So like one of my favorite meals out on trail is shrimp and grits with a bunch of veggies. So I actually really like putting a lot of my own meals together kind of from ingredients that are dehydrated. I suck at dehydrating food. I don't know why. I'm really paranoid about it. So I like way over dehydrate things and then they never rehydrate. I'm really bad at it. So I actually love this company, Northern Bay Trading Company. They're over in Wisconsin. They're really close to the SHT. They're within like 20 miles of the trail. So they're kind of local. They do phenomenal freeze-dried stuff. That stuff is so good. You can just eat it. So like they've got a ton of fruits and stuff that you can just eat it as a trail snack. So I bring a lot of that with. There's also a group on Facebook that is specifically for backpacking food. And there's a lot of really great advice there. I am still, after 2,000 miles, I am still struggling with this and learning on how to eat well on trail because, our options are limited. And out there, I think at the end of my 1,500 mile hike, I was really feeling run down. I was not getting enough calories. So there are some tricks I recommend in the book, but I'll just be honest with that. I'm still learning about this. Okay. So yeah.
All right, thanks.
I will say being able to eat the same thing over and over again is a real strength as a thru hiker.
Peanut butter every day.
I just eat Nutella out the jar now. It's fine.
That's great. There's been a couple questions about bear activity on the trail, and I'm guessing that it's because folks have looked at the trail conditions page, and we did have some problematic bear encounters at the Leskinen Creek campsite, which is just northwest of the Section 13 cliffs. And we've actually asked folks to try to avoid that campsite until further notice because a bear had gotten into food repeatedly and was unafraid of people. But I would just say in general, it's really rare. As you listed earlier, the safety concern, bears are obviously a concern, but the larger list is falling and getting hurt while out on the trail. I guess, Annie, did you have any other thoughts on being bear safe? And I'm guessing this circles around to practicing leave no trace, but any thoughts that you have there?
Yeah, I think it's super important. I'm going to confess to you guys, 2,000 miles of hiking, I have never seen a bear in the woods, and I'm actually really mad about it. So apparently I do something correctly. I don't know what that is, but actually I do know. One is I keep a really clean camp. I do not eat in my tents. Near my tent. I follow the triangle rule. Even at and the thing about the Superior Hiking Trail campsites is it seems like you're eating in camp, but actually with where the tent pads are generally positioned near the fire ring, you're actually, I think, far enough away to where if a bear came into the fire ring looking for food, like it's not going to walk right on top of your tent generally. Some of the smaller tight sites maybe, but like at the caribou group site, you're so spread out that you're like, it's going to be okay. So just eat in the food areas, but don't bring your food back to your tent ever. This year, investing in something like an Ursack might be good. This is a Kevlar bear-proof thing. I put all my smellables up in my food bag each night. So that's like my toothpaste, my soap. If you're carrying deodorant, I don't bother because I'm hiker trash, stuff like that. And then it's it's super rare. I've never seen one on trail ever. You'll see a lot of signs of them, very fresh poop. So fresh that you're like, pretty sure there's a bear within 20 feet of me. Sometimes like last year, I remember hiking through this really like crazy huge cloud of musk. And that's what people talk about a lot, is that bears are very pungent. And so I was like, oh, I bet there's a bear like right here. So I think it's just a matter of situational awareness. You always kind of want to be keeping your wits about you when you're hiking. That's why I generally don't hike with headphones for that reason. I think that your hearing, your vision, your sense of smell are all really important tool. So I don't want to take one out of the game. If I'm doing a road walk, I do listen to headphones because it's kind of monotonous, but so just paying attention. And if you do come across one, I think the advice that I've heard is, you know, there's a really great podcast called The Wild, and there's the guy who does it is a 30-year-long bear researcher. And what he talks about is there's no one right way to handle animal encounters. Animals are individuals. Some of them are aggressive. Some of them are super passive and they're just going to run away with you, from you. 99% of the animal encounters I have had on trail, they ran away, okay? I've met some very curious garter snakes. All the porcupines do not, okay? They own the forest. They do not care. You can yell at them, they will not move, okay? Because they have an armor of quills. They know it. But most other animals are going to run away from you. And what the point he makes is that you really have to assess in that situation what to do. What kind of body language is the animal making? And I know it's like we don't really speak fluent bear, but we are all creatures on this planet, and we do kind of speak a similar language sometimes. So if a bear is, you know, huffing at you or like doing this stuff, you know, clearly it wants you to back up. You know, now you don't want to run from bears ever, but you can give animals space, you can get off trail. If you come on a bear and they haven't seen you yet, you know, don't just off the bat start screaming at it, because then you might scare it and into attacking you, right? So you just want to, usually if I come up across an animal that doesn't know I'm there yet, I'll just say something like, you know, hey bear, hey moose, hello, and just kind of let them know that you're there. And then I try to read them, like, what are they going to do? Like 100% of the park rangers that I've met up on the North Shore really didn't care about bears. Okay, I even rolled into Split Rock one night and there was a bear like terrorizing the place and running through and stealing everybody's food, and every family in the place was like, running out to their car. And I was coming in to go out on the trail the next day, and I asked a ranger, like, should I not camp here? And he was like, meh. It's fine. He's like, are you gonna put your food in your tent? And I was like, no, I'll put it in the bear locker. He's like, you'll be fine. And I was totally fine. I'm sorry, I had a larger point about that I've kind of lost because I'm a little talkative. You guys have figured out. What was the other point? There was an important point though.
You know, I'd say your last bit there of keeping the food safe is super important. Yeah. And in campsites specifically. Speaking of the state parks too, the DNR has a great guide on how to handle bears, how to prevent encounters, and how to prepare for an encounter to stay safe as well on their website, which we link on our trail conditions page as well.
And that was, the last point was just that all of the rangers that I've known up on the North Shore were way more afraid of moose than bears because they're much more aggressive. So, yeah.
That's good. All right, there was just one other question that I wanted to get to here, and then we'll let you go. Thank you so much for hanging on, Annie. This has been great.
Oh, I'm having fun. Thanks, you guys.
Good.
Yeah.
There were kind of two questions that are related. So Pat asked, any tips on conditioning before getting on the trail? And then Angela asked, how often do you plan rest days? And I feel like those two are kind of connected. How do you get ready for it? And then once you're out there, how frequently do you try to rest?
Oh, and this is a really important point I forgot to make in the main presentation that I wanted to, which is shakedown hikes. If you're a Minnesota hiker and you want to do a through hike on the Superior Hiking Trail, go to the hiking trail to train. You're not going to ruin it for yourself. Okay. As the pictures I showed you before, the trail changes literally every day. Okay. Every time you hike it, it's going to be new. You're not going to spoil anything for yourself. But if you can get up on, especially that Sawtooth section with your full load, and do a weekend, you're going to figure out like, wow, this is too heavy real fast. But training wise, sorry, I'm going to tell you the things that we probably don't want to hear. Cardio, like cardio strength training, high intensity interval. Probably the best hiking shape I've been in my life. I was doing cardio boxing workouts 4 times a week before I went. And when I hit the trail at that level of fitness, I was good. I was fine. So, but I also, you know, it's also a question of time. I would really, if you're going to give yourself the gift of a through hike, give yourself the gift of time to do it. you know, I know if you love doing 30-mile days, go do 30-mile days, do it. But if you don't, try to do 30-mile days if you're not a 30-mile-a-day hiker. And it's worth taking the unpaid time off of work and saving up the money for a year ahead so you can afford to do that, so that you do have the time days, if that's what you want to do. And if that's the case, you're going to train up on the trail. If you can build a little time into your hike, maybe an extra week where you go and do lower miles and you kind of gradually ease your way into it, your fitness actually increases really fast once you're out there.
I think that makes a ton of sense. And anyone who's done a lot of training and hiking knows how important rest days are too. So you got to make
rest
sure.
Days, yeah. Rest days are, yeah, I highly recommend them. If you don't take them, your body will force you to. And then you run the risk of being out there without enough food. Like, unless you're an ultra marathoner, if you're kind of an average person like me, I need a rest day every 5 to 8 days, usually.
Gotta take a day off a week.
Yeah, you really do. That, you know, Sabbath. Take a Sabbath on trail too, rest day, because it helps you enjoy it more. You know, if you can just go to town and like spend a day eating, you're gonna feel a lot better when you get back on the trail, because you run such a calorie. You just cannot bring enough food on trail for the amount of calories that you're burning. So by the time you get to an end of a section, you are so undercaloried that you feel like you're starving, because you are, you know. So if you can go to town and eat a ton of food, you know, you feel a lot better right away. So
thanks, Annie. I think that's about it. We have covered a ton of ground, a ton of trail throughout this webinar. So thank you so much, Annie. Thank you for everybody for tuning in, for hanging on here. For those of you who are still with us, we are going to, this has been recorded, so we're going to share the recording on our website afterwards. And then we're also going to send out an email to everybody who had registered for this event with links to some of these resources that we discussed. So you don't have to go scouring the internet. We're going to have an email in your inbox with links to our website and Annie's book and some of these other resources. So thank you again, everybody. Thank you, Annie, from the SHTA, and from everybody who's been tuning in. This has been amazing.
Thank you, Jaron, so much for having me. And I know we did not get to everyone's questions. I apologize. That was my fault. So if you guys want to send me a question, you can reach me through wildstory.site. I will be happy to answer them. And maybe, Jaron, if you want to send me any questions we didn't get answered today, I can send those to you, and we can send them out to everybody.
Awesome. That sounds great. And of course, folks, you can reach the Superior Hiking Trail Association on our website, superiorhiking.org, or by email at info@superiorhiking.org. We try to be responsive as quickly as possible. All right, everybody, thank you so much. We're gonna go ahead and wrap up here, and we hope to see you out on the trail. Thank you, Annie.
Happy trails.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.